I'm Jessica Mitchell, 29, and I just had the most bittersweet wedding day of all time. The venue was perfect, my dress was stunning, my fiancé was beaming, but the two empty seats in the front row told the whole story. My parents chose my brother's regular season college football game over what I had simply called an important event in my life. What they didn't know is that they had just missed their only daughter's wedding. And what happened next would change our family forever. Hey everyone! Before I dive into this wild family drama, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Are you team family comes first or team actions have consequences? Hit that subscribe button if you've ever had to deal with family members who play favorites, and smash that like button if you're ready for some serious karma in this story. Trust me, what my parents learned about priorities will have you glued to your screen. Growing up in suburban Boston as a Mitchell meant living in the shadow of athletic excellence. My younger brother, Tyler, was the golden child, a football prodigy from the moment he could walk. At 25, he was now the starting quarterback for a Division I college team with whispers of NFL potential humming in the background. My parents, Richard and Diana Mitchell, were the quintessential sports parents. Dad had been a college athlete himself whose career was cut short by injury, and Mom was the team mom who organized everything from fundraisers to away game travel logistics. Then there was me, Jessica, the artsy, bookish daughter who preferred museums to stadiums and who'd built a successful career as an event planner. My achievements never seemed to measure up in the Mitchell family value system. Getting straight A's, graduating summa cum laude, or landing my dream job at a prestigious event planning company in Boston didn't generate the same excitement as Tyler completing a touchdown pass. It wasn't that my parents didn't love me. They did, in their way. They attended my college graduation and occasionally asked about my work. But there was always a qualitative difference in how they engaged with my life versus my brother's. Tyler's games were non-negotiable family commitments. My piano recitals as a child? Negotiable. My art show in high school? They came for 30 minutes before rushing to Tyler's football practice. My college scholarship ceremony? They sent flowers because it conflicted with one of Tyler's recruitment meetings. Over the years, I learned to expect less. I created a protective shell around my heart and found validation elsewhere, in my friendships, my relationship with my fiancé Michael, and my professional accomplishments. Michael understood my family dynamics all too well. He'd been on the receiving end of the Mitchell family's divided attention since we started dating 3 years ago. "They're just programmed that way, Jess," he would say, holding me after another family dinner where the conversation revolved almost exclusively around Tyler's latest game. "They don't know how much they're missing by not truly seeing you." Michael Reeves was everything my family was not: attentive, balanced, and appreciative of the person I was rather than wishing for something different. As a software engineer who valued intellect and creativity, he found my passion for design and logistics fascinating. When I described the complex wedding I'd orchestrated for a client, he actually listened instead of waiting for a pause to change the subject to sports. When he proposed last year, it was intimate and perfect, a surprise picnic at the Boston Public Garden where we'd had our first date. I called my parents immediately after accepting, barely containing my excitement. "Mom, Dad, Michael and I are engaged." I had practically sung into the phone after my mother answered. There was a pause before my mother responded, "Oh, that's wonderful, honey. Dad and I are actually heading out to Tyler's game right now, but we'll call you tomorrow to hear all about it, okay? Love you." The call ended before I could respond. No questions about the proposal, no request to speak to Michael, no immediate plans to celebrate. Just another moment where Tyler's routine game took precedence over a once-in-a-lifetime milestone in my life. That night, as Michael and I celebrated with champagne and calls to his enthusiastic family, something shifted inside me. A seed of an idea took root, one that would eventually grow into the plan that led to those empty seats at my wedding. "Would your parents actually miss our wedding for one of Tyler's games?" Michael had asked, noticing my quietness after the brief call with my parents. Without hesitation, I had replied, certainty in my voice. "Unless we scheduled it during football off-season, but even then, there might be training camps or special events." The more I thought about it over the following months, the more I realized I didn't want to plan my wedding around football schedules. I didn't want to compete for attention on what should be one of the most important days of my life. And I didn't want to set the precedent for the rest of my marriage that my family milestones would always be secondary. As an event planner, I knew exactly how to orchestrate what came next. I began planning our wedding meticulously, selecting a date that coincided with one of Tyler's home games, not a championship or particularly significant match, just a regular season game. I reserved a beautiful venue, hired vendors I trusted from my professional network, and created the perfect day down to the smallest detail. The only detail I left vague was the nature of the event itself. To my parents, I simply mentioned that Michael and I were hosting an important event that we really wanted them to attend. I deliberately avoided using the word wedding, knowing it would trigger immediate questions about dates and football conflicts. "We'd love for you to be there," I told them over Sunday dinner, 2 months before the wedding. "It's on October 12th at 2 p.m. It would mean a lot to us." I watched my parents exchange a look across the table before my father cleared his throat. "October 12th? That's when Tyler plays against State. It's an important game for his stats this season." "I know," I said calmly, meeting his gaze. "I'm aware of Tyler's schedule. But this is really important to Michael and me." My mother reached across to pat my hand. "Sweetie, you know we'd love to be there, but we haven't missed one of Tyler's games since he started playing. He expects us in the family section. Can't you reschedule your event?" "What is it exactly?" "It's personal," I replied, maintaining my composure. "And no, we can't reschedule. The venue and everything is already confirmed." The conversation went back and forth with increasing frustration on both sides. My parents couldn't understand why I couldn't be more specific or why I would deliberately schedule something during a game. I couldn't understand why they couldn't attend one event for me while missing one of dozens of Tyler's games. In the end, they made their choice. My mother called a week later to officially decline. "Jessica, we just can't miss Tyler's game. You know how it is. We'll make it up to you, I promise. Maybe we can all have dinner the next weekend to celebrate whatever this event is." I thanked her politely and ended the call, a strange calm settling over me. The experiment was complete. The results were exactly as I had predicted, and now I knew exactly what needed to happen next. The wedding planning intensified after my parents' decision. With the knowledge that they wouldn't be attending, I was free to create exactly the day Michael and I wanted without any input or interference. Part of me felt guilty about the deception, but a larger part felt liberated. For once, this was truly about what I wanted, not what would fit around Tyler's schedule or what would please my parents. Michael was hesitant at first when I explained my plan not to tell my parents the true nature of the event. "Are you sure about this, Jess?" he asked, concern etched on his face. "This is pretty extreme. Once it's done, there's no taking it back." "I'm not doing this to punish them," I explained, arranging sample floral centerpieces on our dining table. "I'm doing this because I need to know once and for all where I stand. If they choose a regular season game over an important event in my life, that tells me everything. And if I tell them it's our wedding, they'll either reluctantly come and be checking their phones for game updates the whole time, or they'll make me feel guilty about the date until I change it." Michael wrapped his arms around me from behind, resting his chin on my shoulder. "I just don't want you to regret not having them there. Wedding days are supposed to be happy." "I'll be happy marrying you," I said, turning to face him. "And I'll be surrounded by people who truly want to be there, not people who are counting the minutes until they can leave." As the weeks passed, our wedding took shape. I selected a venue overlooking Boston Harbor, with floor-to-ceiling windows that would capture the autumn light perfectly. My dress was a sleek, modern design that made me feel confident and beautiful. Michael's family was incredibly supportive, his mother stepping in to help with details traditionally handled by the mother of the bride. "Jessica, darling, I'm so sorry your parents are missing this," Michael's mother, Eleanor, said one day as we finalized the seating chart. "But please know that you're already a daughter to me." I blinked back tears, grateful for her kindness. "Thank you. That means more than you know." We sent invitations to extended family members, carefully explaining the situation and asking for their discretion. Most understood and agreed to keep the secret, though a few expressed concerns about the inevitable fallout. My cousin Rachel, who had always been more like a sister to me, was particularly worried. "Jess, I get why you're doing this, and God knows Aunt Diana and Uncle Richard have always been obsessed with Tyler's sports, but this is going to devastate them," she said over coffee. "Maybe it needs to," I replied quietly. "Maybe they need to understand what it feels like to miss something that can never be recreated." As the RSVPs came in, I was touched by how many people made arrangements to attend despite the relatively short notice. Friends from college flew in from across the country. Colleagues from my event planning firm juggled their schedules. Michael's extended family confirmed their attendance en masse, excited to welcome me officially into their fold. The only awkwardness came from Tyler himself. My brother and I had always had a complicated relationship. He wasn't malicious about being the favorite. He'd simply grown up in an environment where his accomplishments were disproportionately celebrated, and that had shaped him into someone who expected to be the center of attention. When I called to tell him about the important event, carefully avoiding specifics, he immediately noted the conflict with his game. "Seriously, Jess? You know Mom and Dad never miss my games. Why would you schedule something then?" "Because my life doesn't revolve around your football schedule, Tyler," I said, more sharply than I'd intended. "This is important to me." There was a pause on the line. "Are you and Michael getting married or something?" he asked suddenly. The question caught me off guard. Tyler could be surprisingly perceptive when it suited him. I considered lying, but something in me couldn't do it. Not to Tyler directly. "If I tell you the truth, you have to promise not to tell Mom and Dad," I said finally. "Oh my God, you're getting married!" Tyler exclaimed. "Jess, what the hell? Why wouldn't you tell them?" "Because I already told them I'm having an important event that day, and they've already chosen your game over it," I explained. "If they can't make time for an unspecified, important event in their daughter's life, then they don't deserve to know it's my wedding." The line went silent for several beats. "That's cold, Jess." "No, what's cold is having parents who have never prioritized anything in my life over your sports career," I countered. "This isn't about you, Tyler. This is between me and them." After another long pause, Tyler surprised me. "I get it. I mean, I don't agree with how you're handling it, but I get why you're upset. Do you want me to skip the game? I could probably talk to Coach and—" "No," I cut him off. "Don't do that. This isn't a test for you, and I don't want to put you in the middle. Just keep this between us, okay?" Tyler agreed, and I hung up feeling both relieved and unsettled. My brother and I had never really been allies growing up. The family dynamic hadn't encouraged that, but his offer to miss his game felt like the first genuine acknowledgement of my feelings from anyone in my immediate family. As the wedding day approached, everything was coming together perfectly. The weather forecast promised a crisp, sunny October day. The final fittings were complete, the menu was set, and our vows were written. Michael and I had decided to write our own, wanting to express our unique journey and promises to each other. The night before our wedding, I received a text from my mother. "Good luck with your event tomorrow, sweetie. Sorry again we can't make it. Tyler's really excited about the game. Love you." I stared at the casual message, feeling a complex mixture of sadness, anger, and resolve. Tomorrow would change everything, not just my marital status, but the entire foundation of my family relationships. As I drifted off to sleep beside Michael for the last time before becoming his wife, I wondered whether my parents would ever truly understand what they had chosen to miss. October 12th dawned exactly as I had hoped, brilliant blue skies with just enough autumn crispness in the air to make the harbor sparkle. I woke up in the hotel suite I'd booked for the bridal party, momentarily disoriented before remembering today was my wedding day. Rachel and my two best friends, Sophia and Lily, were already up and about, arranging breakfast and mimosas on the suite's dining table. The hairstylist and makeup artist would be arriving in an hour. Everything was proceeding according to plan, the meticulous, detailed plan I'd crafted both professionally and emotionally over the past months. "Morning, bride-to-be," Sophia sang out, handing me a glass of orange juice. "How are you feeling?" "Surprisingly calm," I answered truthfully. There was a certain peace that came with having made my decision and committed to this path. No more wondering whether my parents would prioritize me. I already had my answer. As the morning progressed, I was transformed from sleepy-eyed Jessica to a radiant bride. The makeup artist gave me a natural, glowing look that enhanced rather than masked my features. The hairstylist created an elegant updo with a few soft tendrils framing my face. When I finally stepped into my dress, an ivory column with delicate lace overlay and a modest train, the room fell silent. "Oh, Jess," Rachel whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "You look absolutely beautiful." I turned to the full-length mirror and barely recognized myself. The woman reflected back at me looked confident, serene, and undeniably happy, despite the undercurrent of family drama. "I wish your mom could see you," Lily said softly, immediately looking apologetic. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have." "It's okay," I assured her, smoothing down the front of my dress. This was my choice. As the bridal party made our way to the venue, I checked my phone one last time. There was a text from Tyler, "Good luck today. You deserve to be happy." Nothing from my parents, who would already be at the stadium, settling into their usual seats, proudly wearing Tyler's jersey number. The venue looked even more beautiful than I had imagined. Flowers in rich autumn hues of burgundy, amber, and cream adorned the ceremony space. Rows of white chairs faced the harbor view, with an elegant floral arch marking the spot where Michael and I would exchange vows. Guests were beginning to arrive, being escorted to their seats by the ushers. I peeked out from the bridal suite to watch the scene unfold. Michael's family was easily identifiable, a large, boisterous group with his mother Eleanor at the center, fussing over his younger sister's dresses and his father's tie. They had welcomed me from the start, incorporating me into family traditions and inside jokes with genuine warmth. In the front row on my side, where my parents should have been, sat Michael's aunt and uncle instead. We had rearranged the seating once it became clear my parents wouldn't attend, not wanting those conspicuous empty chairs to distract from the ceremony. The wedding coordinator, a colleague who had insisted on working my wedding as her gift to us, knocked gently on the bridal suite door. "We're ready when you are, Jessica," she said with a professional smile that didn't quite hide her sympathy. Everyone in my professional circle knew about the family situation. It had been impossible to keep it completely private while planning. I took a deep breath and gathered my bouquet, a lush arrangement of garden roses, dahlias, and eucalyptus that smelled divine. "I'm ready." The ceremony was everything I had hoped for. Walking down the aisle alone had been another difficult decision, but it felt right. This was my journey, stepping into my future on my own terms. When I reached Michael, his eyes were full of tears and pride. "You are breathtaking," he whispered as I took my place beside him. Our officiant, a college friend who had gotten ordained for the occasion, welcomed everyone and spoke eloquently about love, commitment, and creating your own family through the bonds you choose to honor. Michael and I had specifically asked her to emphasize this theme, and her words resonated deeply with our situation. When it came time for our vows, Michael went first. His voice was steady as he promised not just love and fidelity, but understanding and partnership. "Jessica, I promise to see you, truly see you, every day of our lives together. To celebrate your victories, support your dreams, and always make sure you know how valued and loved you are. You will never be second place in my heart." Tears streamed down my face as I delivered my own vows, promising to build a home and family based on mutual respect and balanced attention. I promise that our children, should we be blessed with them, will grow up knowing they are equally precious, equally worthy of celebration. As we exchanged rings and were pronounced husband and wife, the applause from our guests felt like a validation of not just our marriage, but my decision to stand up for my own worth. The reception that followed was joyful and relaxed. We dined on the gourmet meal I had carefully selected, cut into the 3-tiered cake decorated with sugar flowers that matched my bouquet, and danced our first dance to the song that had played when Michael proposed. Throughout the evening, I was surrounded by genuine love and attention. Friends and family shared stories about Michael and me, toasted our happiness, and celebrated our union without any of the divided attention I had grown up experiencing. No one was checking football scores or looking at their watches, wondering when they could leave. It was during the father-daughter dance that the absence of my parents hit hardest. We had decided to modify the tradition. Michael danced with his mother while I danced with his father, who had become a dear friend and mentor to me. "We're so proud to have you in our family, Jessica," Michael's father said as we moved around the dance floor. "I hope you know that." "Thank you," I managed, emotion tightening my throat. "It means the world to me." As the evening wound down and guests began to depart, I found a quiet moment with Michael on the venue's terrace, overlooking the harbor lights. The October air had grown chilly, and he wrapped his jacket around my shoulders. "Any regrets?" he asked gently, knowing exactly what was on my mind. I considered the question seriously before answering. "No," I said finally. "This was perfect. And necessary." What I didn't say was that the true test was yet to come, when my parents discovered what they had missed, and we all had to live with the consequences of the choices made. It was Rachel who ultimately broke the news to my parents. We had discussed it extensively during our wedding planning, who would tell them, how, and when. I wanted them to know right away, to understand immediately what their choice had cost them, but I also couldn't bring myself to make the call. Not on my wedding night, not on the honeymoon that followed. So we had agreed. Rachel would tell them the day after we returned from our 10-day trip to Greece. Michael and I spent those 10 days in a blissful bubble, exploring ancient ruins, swimming in the crystalline waters of Santorini, and starting our marriage in a place completely removed from family drama. We spoke little about what awaited us back home, choosing instead to focus on each other and the beautiful beginning we were creating. But as our flight touched down in Boston, reality rushed back. I turned my phone off airplane mode to find dozens of missed calls and messages from my parents. Rachel had done as promised. "They know," I said quietly to Michael as we waited for our luggage. He squeezed my hand. "Are you ready for this?" "As ready as I'll ever be," I replied, scrolling through the increasingly desperate texts from my mother. "Jessica, please call us immediately. Jessica, we need to talk. What Rachel told us can't be true. Jessica, we're your parents. How could you do this to us?" The last one made me laugh humorlessly. How could I do this to them? The irony was almost too perfect. We took a taxi directly to our new apartment, the one we had moved into just days before the wedding, but had barely lived in yet. I wanted to be on my own territory for whatever came next. Michael ordered takeout while I finally called my parents back, putting the phone on speaker so he could hear. My mother answered on the first ring. "Jessica." Her voice sounded hoarse, as if she'd been crying. "Hi, Mom," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "Is it true?" she demanded immediately. "Did you really get married without telling us?" Rachel showed us the pictures, but I still can't believe it. "There must be some mistake." "There's no mistake," I confirmed. "Michael and I got married on October 12th. At the event I invited you to, which you declined to attend because of Tyler's football game." The silence on the other end was deafening before my father's voice broke in, indicating he was also on the call. "This is beyond cruel, Jessica," he said, anger evident in his tone. "How could you keep something this important from us? We're your parents. We had a right to know." "Did you?" I asked calmly. "You've missed most of the important events in my life because of Tyler's sports. Why should my wedding be any different?" "That's not true," my mother interjected. "We've always supported you." "When it was convenient," I countered. "When it didn't conflict with Tyler's schedule. I told you I was having an important event that day. You chose, once again, to prioritize a regular season football game over whatever was happening in my life." "But if we had known it was your wedding," my father began. "That's exactly the point," I cut him off. "You shouldn't need to know it's my wedding to make time for me. You should want to be present for the important moments in my life, whatever they are." The conversation deteriorated from there. My mother oscillated between tears and recriminations, while my father maintained a tone of righteous indignation. They accused me of being vindictive, immature, and selfish. They couldn't understand how I could manipulate them this way or why I would want to get married without my family present. We would have been there if we'd known, my mother insisted for what felt like the 100th time. "And that's the problem," I responded tiredly. "You would have come grudgingly, resentfully, checking the score on your phones throughout the ceremony. I wanted people there who wanted to be there, not people who felt obligated because of the specific nature of the event. By the time we hung up, nothing had been resolved. My parents were hurt and angry. I was emotionally drained, but standing firm. Michael held me as I finally allowed myself to cry, not for the decision I'd made, but for the family dynamic that had made it necessary. The fallout continued in the days that followed. Extended family members called to express their opinions, some supportive of my decision, others critical. My Aunt Catherine, my mother's sister, was particularly understanding. "Your mother isn't telling the whole story," she told me during a long phone call. "She's rewriting history to make herself the victim." But I remember all those dance recitals she missed, all those parent-teacher conferences where your dad sent his apologies because Tyler had a game. "You deserved better, Jessica." Tyler's reaction surprised me most. He showed up at our apartment 3 days after we returned, looking uncomfortable but determined. "Can I come in?" he asked when I opened the door. I gestured him inside, where Michael was setting up our new entertainment system. The two exchanged awkward nods before Michael excused himself to give us privacy. "So," Tyler began, sitting stiffly on our couch. "That was quite a statement you made." I braced myself for more criticism, but instead, Tyler sighed heavily. "Look, I've been thinking a lot about this. At first, I was angry like Mom and Dad. It felt like you did this to hurt them, to hurt all of us. But then I started remembering things, like how they missed your college graduation ceremony because I had a training camp, or how every family vacation revolved around where I was playing." I stared at him, not quite believing what I was hearing. "I never realized how uneven it was," he continued. "It was just normal to me that everything centered around my schedule. And I liked the attention, you know? What kid wouldn't? But looking back now, it wasn't fair to you, Jess." My eyes welled with tears. "No, it wasn't. I'm sorry," he said simply. "I'm sorry I never stood up for you. And I'm sorry I missed your wedding." "You had a game," I reminded him, a hint of bitterness creeping into my voice. "Yeah, and we lost anyway," he said with a rueful smile. "Would have been better to see my big sister get married." That conversation marked a turning point, not in my relationship with my parents, which remained strained, but in my relationship with Tyler. For the first time, we began to develop a sibling bond that existed outside of the toxic family dynamic that had shaped our childhood. As weeks turned into months, my parents cycled through various stages of grief and anger. They alternated between tearful pleas for reconciliation and cold silence. They demanded apologies while refusing to acknowledge their part in the situation. They tried to enlist other family members to pressure me into admitting I was wrong. Through it all, Michael remained my rock, supporting my boundaries while gently encouraging me to consider what kind of relationship I wanted with my parents moving forward. We celebrated our first holiday season as a married couple with his family, who continued to embrace me with unqualified warmth. It was during this time that I discovered I was pregnant, an unexpected but joyful development that forced me to confront the question of my parents' role in my future child's life. Could I trust them not to repeat the same patterns of favoritism? Would they be the kind of grandparents who showed up consistently, or only when it was convenient? As my body began to change with early pregnancy, I found myself at a crossroads. The wedding deception had served its purpose, forcing an acknowledgement of long-established patterns, but now I needed to decide what came next. Would this be the end of our relationship, or could it be the painful beginning of something healthier? I wish I could watch you all's reactions right now, because this is where the story takes a really unexpected turn. If you're invested in what happens next between Jessica and her parents, hit that like button and leave a comment with your predictions. Trust me, what happens next changed everything for my family. Don't forget to subscribe if you want more family drama stories with endings that will leave you speechless. By Christmas, the silence between my parents and me had calcified into something that felt permanent. I still hadn't told them about the pregnancy, unsure if I wanted them involved at all. Michael's family, on the other hand, was ecstatic about becoming grandparents, showering us with baby books and already discussing nursery themes despite the fact that I was barely showing. It was New Year's Eve when everything changed. Michael and I were hosting a small gathering at our apartment, just a few close friends, Rachel and, surprisingly, Tyler, who had declined our parents' invitation to their annual party in favor of spending the evening with us. It marked another step in our evolving sibling relationship, one that felt both foreign and precious. As midnight approached, my phone rang. It was my mother, and I nearly declined the call before something stopped me. Maybe the hormones, maybe the sentimentality of the holiday, or maybe just exhaustion with the ongoing conflict. "Hello," I answered, stepping into our bedroom for privacy. "Jessica," my mother said, her voice unmistakably slurred. "Happy New Year, sweetheart." "Mom, are you drunk?" I asked, concerned despite myself. My mother rarely drank more than a single glass of wine. "Maybe a little," she admitted. "Your father and I had a fight. About you, actually. About everything." I sat down on the edge of the bed, suddenly alert. "What do you mean?" "He thinks we should just move on. Pretend nothing happened. That you'll eventually come around because family is family." She gave a hollow laugh. "But I can't stop thinking about what you said. About us always choosing Tyler over you. I've been going through old photos, old calendars, counting how many of your events we missed versus his." My heart pounded as I waited for her to continue. "It's true," she said finally, her voice breaking. "We missed so much, Jess. Your debate championships, your art exhibitions. Even your college graduation, we only came to the dinner after, not the ceremony itself. How did I not see it?" Tears sprang to my eyes. "I don't know, Mom. I've been trying to make you see it for years." "I think I didn't want to see it," she admitted. "It was easier to tell myself we were being fair, that you just didn't need us as much because you were always so independent. But that's not true, is it? We taught you to be independent because we weren't reliable." The raw honesty knocked the wind out of me. For years, I'd been labeled the difficult one for pointing out exactly what my mother was now acknowledging. "I missed your wedding," she continued, openly crying now. "My only daughter's wedding. There's no fixing that, is there? No do-over." "No," I agreed softly. "There isn't." "I'm so sorry, Jessica," she said, the words I'd waited years to hear. "I'm so sorry." We talked for almost an hour, missing the midnight countdown entirely. My mother poured out years of regrets and realizations while I listened, alternating between tears and cautious hope. She told me that the wedding revelation had initially felt like a cruel prank, but over time had forced her to confront uncomfortable truths about their parenting. "Your father still doesn't see it," she confessed. "He thinks you're being selfish and dramatic. But I can unsee it now. And I can't keep pretending." By the time we hung up, it was well into the new year. I returned to the living room to find our guests still celebrating, Michael looking at me questioningly. I gave him a small nod, letting him know I was okay, before pulling Tyler aside to share what had happened. "Mom actually admitted they were wrong?" he asked incredulously. "More or less," I confirmed. "At least she's starting to see the pattern." Tyler shook his head in disbelief. "Dad's going to freak. He hates being wrong." "I know," I said grimly. "This might get worse before it gets better." I was right. The next day, my father called, furious about my mother's breakdown and blaming me for putting these ideas in her head. He demanded that I apologize and stop dividing the family with my selfish antics. "Dad, I'm not apologizing for pointing out a pattern that has existed my entire life," I said firmly. "This is ridiculous," he exploded. "We've always supported both our children equally. You're rewriting history because you're jealous of your brother's success." "Richard, stop it." I heard my mother shout in the background. "You know that's not true. We've been looking at all those old calendars. You can see it right there in black and white." What followed was the sound of a heated argument between my parents, punctuated by my father's defensive assertions and my mother's increasingly firm rebuttals. Eventually, my father hung up without another word to me. Over the next few weeks, my parents' marriage entered a crisis of its own. My mother called frequently, sometimes to apologize again, sometimes to update me on the ongoing conflict with my father. They had started marriage counseling, which my father attended reluctantly, still maintaining that he had done nothing wrong. The therapist asked us to make a list of all the important events in both your and Tyler's lives, and then mark which ones we attended, my mother told me during one call. Your father couldn't even finish the exercise. He got up and walked out when he saw the disparity on paper. As January turned to February, I finally told my mother about the pregnancy. Her joy was tempered by uncertainty. Would I allow her to be part of her grandchild's life after everything that had happened? I want to, I told her honestly. But things need to change. Really change, not just temporary guilt-induced attention that fades as soon as Tyler has another game. I understand, she said solemnly. And I want to do better, Jessica. I really do. The real test came when Tyler announced he'd been invited to a prestigious all-star game the same weekend as the baby shower Michael's family had planned for us. My mother didn't hesitate before assuring me she would be at the shower. What about Dad? I asked, bracing myself for the answer. I've already told him I'm coming to your shower, she said firmly. Whether he chooses to join me or attend Tyler's game is up to him. It was the first time in my life that my mother had unequivocally chosen an event in my life over one of Tyler's. The significance wasn't lost on either of us. Spring arrived with a mixture of tentative reconciliation and ongoing tension. My growing baby bump became both a symbol of new beginnings and a ticking clock. Would my family heal before this child entered the world? My mother threw herself into grandmother preparations with the same enthusiasm she had once reserved for Tyler's football career. She attended every doctor's appointment I invited her to, helped Michael and me research childcare options, and showed up at our apartment regularly with home-cooked meals and pregnancy books. My father, on the other hand, remained distant. He had attended one awkward dinner at our apartment, where he'd made stilted conversation about the weather and politics, while studiously avoiding any mention of the baby or the ongoing family conflict. When he did speak about the pregnancy, it was in vague, uncomfortable terms, as if he couldn't quite connect the abstract idea of a grandchild with the reality of our strained relationship. He's trying, my mother defended when I expressed frustration after the dinner. This isn't easy for him, Jessica. He's questioning everything he thought he knew about himself as a father. Well, it wasn't easy for me growing up feeling like an afterthought, I countered. But I'm supposed to just forgive and forget because now it's hard for him. Tyler, surprisingly, became an unexpected ally in the healing process. Having acknowledged the imbalance in our upbringing, he seemed determined to help bridge the gap between me and our parents, particularly our father. Dad's struggling, he told me during one of his now regular visits to our apartment. His whole identity was wrapped up in being this super supportive sports dad. Now he's realizing that narrative isn't as simple as he thought. That's not my problem to fix, I said, rubbing my swollen belly absently. I know, Tyler agreed. But I think he wants to make things right. He just doesn't know how. The baby shower became a symbolic battleground. As the date approached, my mother confirmed her attendance repeatedly, sometimes calling just to reassure me that nothing would prevent her from being there. Tyler, too, had declined participation in the All-Star game, stating that family commitments took precedence, a phrase that sent shockwaves through our family system. My father remained non-committal until 3 days before the event, when he called me directly, something he rarely did, usually relying on my mother to maintain family communications. Jessica, he said, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. About this weekend. I steeled myself for disappointment. Yes, I'll be there, he said simply. At your baby shower. The pause before baby shower spoke volumes. This was still uncomfortable territory for him, but the commitment itself represented a seismic shift. Thank you, Dad, I replied, unsure what else to say. The shower itself was a study in family dynamics and transition. Michael's family hosted the event at their spacious home, creating a warm, celebratory atmosphere with tasteful decorations and thoughtful activities. My mother arrived early, eager to help with final preparations and glowing with excitement about becoming a grandmother. My father arrived exactly on time, looking uncomfortable in a blue button-down shirt that my mother had obviously selected to match the baby boy-themed decorations. He clutched a large, professionally wrapped gift and hovered near the entrance, clearly unsure of his place in this predominantly female gathering. Mr. Mitchell, Michael's mother greeted him warmly. We're so glad you could make it. Richard, isn't it? Please, come in, the other grandfathers are out on the deck grilling. Michael's dad thinks he's a pitmaster now that they've gotten that new smoker. The casual inclusion, the assumption that of course he belonged among the grandfathers, seemed to momentarily disorient my father before he nodded gratefully and followed her directions to the deck. Throughout the afternoon, I watched my parents navigate this new territory. My mother integrated seamlessly, participating enthusiastically in every game and tradition, sharing stories with Michael's mother about their own pregnancy experiences, and genuinely seeming to enjoy herself. My father remained more reserved, but made visible efforts. He engaged in conversation with Michael's father about their respective careers, admired the nursery items we'd received, and even reluctantly participated in a game that involved guessing the size of my belly using string. The most telling moment came during the gift opening. When I unwrapped my parents' present, a beautiful handmade wooden rocking chair, my father cleared his throat. "I made it," he said, his voice gruff with emotion. "Been working on it since your mother told me about the baby. My father made one for you when you were born. Thought I'd carry on the tradition." I ran my hand over the smooth, polished wood, recognizing the countless hours of careful craftsmanship the piece represented. It was perhaps the most thoughtful gift my father had ever given me, not just the chair itself, but the time and care it embodied. "It's beautiful, Dad," I said, tears welling in my eyes. "Thank you." He nodded, clearly uncomfortable with the emotional moment, but also visibly pleased by my reaction. After the shower, as guests were departing, my father pulled me aside awkwardly. "Tyler's game is on TV right now," he said, and for a moment I felt a stab of the old pain. Would he always bring up Tyler, even in moments that should be about me? But then he continued, "First time I've missed one of his games when I had the option to watch. Feels strange. But I'm glad I was here instead." It wasn't an apology, not explicitly. But from my father, this admission represented a monumental shift, an acknowledgement that his priorities were changing, however uncomfortably. As my pregnancy progressed into the third trimester, these small moments of change accumulated. My father began calling me directly more often, awkwardly inquiring about my health or offering to help Michael with various home preparation projects for the baby. My mother continued her enthusiastic involvement, while also working on establishing healthier boundaries with Tyler, who seemed to be adjusting well to no longer being the family's exclusive center of attention. None of it erased the past. The hurt of my childhood and the wedding they'd missed remained painful realities. But for the first time, I began to envision a future where my child might have grandparents who had learned from their mistakes, who might show up consistently not just for the big moments, but for the ordinary ones too. As my due date approached, I found myself reflecting on the journey of the past year, from the deliberate wedding deception to the painful confrontations to these tentative steps toward healing. The child growing inside me had already catalyzed significant change in our family system, and he hadn't even been born yet. What none of us could have anticipated was how his actual arrival would test every new boundary and commitment we'd established, and ultimately reshape our family forever. James Michael Mitchell Reeves arrived 2 weeks early, in the middle of a springtime thunderstorm that seemed fitting for the dramatic entrance of a child who had already changed so much about our family dynamics before even taking his first breath. My water broke during dinner with my parents, a newly established weekly tradition that still carried its share of awkwardness, but represented ongoing efforts at reconciliation. The timing seemed almost orchestrated by fate. My parents were already with us when the moment came, eliminating any question about whether they would be called or included in the birth. "It's happening," I gasped, feeling the first contraction grip me as I stood from the table, a puddle forming at my feet. What followed was a flurry of activity, Michael grabbing the meticulously packed hospital bag, my mother calmly helping me breathe through contractions while my father called Tyler, who had promised to be there regardless of any sporting commitments, and then the frantic drive to the hospital through the pounding rain. In the delivery room, hours later, something extraordinary happened. As contractions intensified and my composure fractured, it was my father who stepped forward when Michael needed a brief break, taking my hand and speaking with unexpected tenderness. "You're doing great, Jessie girl," he said, using a nickname from my childhood that I hadn't heard in years. "You're the strongest person I know. Always have been." Through the haze of pain, I recognized the significance of his words, not just the encouragement, but the acknowledgement of my strength, something he had rarely commented on throughout my life. James arrived at 3:17 a.m. after 14 hours of labor, his angry cries filling the delivery room as he was placed on my chest. In that moment, watching my son take his first breaths, all the family drama seemed simultaneously insignificant and profoundly important. This child deserved better than the patterns that had shaped my childhood. He deserved to be seen and celebrated exactly as he was, not measured against anyone else's achievements or expectations. The days in the hospital became an unexpected proving ground for our family's healing. My parents took shifts alongside Michael's family, ensuring someone was always with us as we navigated the exhausting early days of parenthood. My father, who had always seemed uncomfortable around babies, shocked everyone by revealing a natural talent for calming James during his fussiest moments. "He just needs to feel secure," my father explained, demonstrating his technique of firmly swaddling James before walking a specific pattern around the room. "You were the same way as a newborn. Nothing would settle you except movement." I exchanged glances with my mother, both of us surprised by this sudden recollection of my infancy, a time I had assumed my father paid little attention to, given his frequent absence during my childhood milestones. "You remember that?" I asked. "Of course," he replied, looking momentarily hurt by the question. "I was there every night for the first 3 months, walking you around the house so your mother could get some sleep." This revelation, that my father had been actively involved in my earliest days, sparked a conversation that continued after we brought James home. As we settled into the exhausting routine of newborn care, my parents became regular fixtures in our apartment, providing meals, holding James so we could shower or nap, and gradually sharing more stories about my own infancy. "We got it wrong," my father admitted one evening, cradling a sleeping James while Michael and I ate the dinner my mother had prepared. "We started out doing it right with you, Jess. Equal attention, equal time. But then Tyler came along, and he was colicky and demanding, and somehow we just fell into patterns. And then your brother started showing athletic talent," my mother continued, "and your father got so excited about having an athlete in the family that everything else became secondary," I finished for her. My father nodded, staring down at James. "I didn't see it happening. That's the honest truth. It wasn't deliberate, but that doesn't make it any less wrong." It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was more acknowledgement than I had ever expected to hear from him. In his own way, my father was trying to make amends, not with grand gestures, but with consistent presence and small admissions that added up over time. As James grew from newborn to infant, our extended family found a new equilibrium. Tyler became an enthusiastic uncle, scheduling his training around opportunities to visit his nephew. My parents established regular grandparent days, with my father even adjusting his work schedule to accommodate these commitments, something he had rarely done for my events growing up. Most significantly, when Tyler made it to the NFL draft 6 months after James was born, my parents faced their first major test of their new priorities. The draft coincided with James's baptism, a date we had selected months in advance. In the old family system, there would have been no question. Everyone would have attended Tyler's draft, and my child's milestone would have been rescheduled or diminished. Instead, my mother didn't hesitate. "We'll be at the baptism," she assured me immediately. My father took longer to decide, but ultimately reached the same conclusion. "Tyler understands," he told me gruffly. "Family first." What made this different from all the times they had invoked family first to prioritize Tyler's events was that, for the first time, they were including all family members in that calculation, not just their star athlete son. Tyler himself chose to attend the baptism, asking his agent to represent him at the draft. "I can find out what team picks me from my phone," he shrugged when I expressed surprise at his decision. "Can't watch my nephew's baptism on a live stream." On the day of the baptism, as I watched my entire family gathered around the font, my parents beaming with pride, Tyler recording the moment on his phone, Michael's arm around my waist. I realized we had come full circle from that wedding day with its conspicuously empty seats. The journey hadn't been easy. The wedding deception had been painful for everyone involved, and the confrontations that followed had nearly broken our family apart permanently. But that rupture had also created space for something new and healthier to grow, a family system where everyone was valued, everyone was seen, and past patterns no longer dictated future choices. As we gathered for photos afterward, James secure in my arms and our newly reformed family surrounding us, I felt a sense of completion. The wounds hadn't fully healed, some never would, but we had found a way forward together, forever changed by the difficult truths we had finally acknowledged. Hey everyone! I know this story probably brought up a lot of feelings for you, whether you've dealt with family favoritism yourself or have children and worry about treating them equally. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done in my situation? Do you think the wedding deception was justified? Has family karma ever come back around in your life? If this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button for more family stories that dive into complex relationships and the healing that can happen when we stand up for ourselves. Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it and share it with someone who might need to hear that they deserve to be prioritized too. Thanks so much for listening to my journey. I'm grateful for each and every one of you. Remember, sometimes the hardest conversations lead to the most beautiful new beginnings.